of farm rock. Thank you for coming to talk with us.
Thank you, Justine. Good to be here.
You are incredibly knowledgeable about the heavy metal rock and roll world. You know all the ins and outs. What is it like to have this kind of insider knowledge, and you must still love it?
Well, I do, and I appreciate people saying that. I don't really, it's not like I ever studied, books about this. I just lived it.
Yeah.
I started in the business really young, right out of high school.
So tell me about, what was the first thing when you were a young man? What made you go, I gotta know, I'm gonna follow this band? Who was the first artist or early experience that made you go, I'm gonna make a life out of this?
Well, the first band I heard as a very little kid, like 9, 10 years old, that made me hear rock music and distorted guitars was a power pop band called the Raspberries. And I loved them, and I got really into them. And then a couple years later, my early teens, I discovered Kiss and became a huge Kiss fan.
Oh man, okay, yeah.
And that was like the gateway, and that made me completely immersed in this world.
Wow.
And I just became consumed with it. And I just said, I'm gonna find a way to do everything I can in the music industry to find a path to have a career in it.
That's fantastic.
So what a lot of people don't know is I worked behind the scenes for many years. I worked for record labels, I worked for management companies, I worked for a record store. So that all plays into the stuff that I know. And then also did freelance writing, artist management, TV, radio. So it all just became like over the decades, all of the experiences benefited each other.
Started building on each other, and then maybe something from 5 years ago comes back to say, hey, we remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's beneficial to have a lot of well-rounded history and experience, because you never know when you're going to be able to call on it.
I think that is so true, and this is an interesting thing. A lot of people who want to get into show business or performing or anything, you got to do it for free at first. You got to put blood, sweat, and tears in it and kind of pay your dues.
Very much.
Then surprisingly, and boy, it sure seems especially true with this rock group, if you do stick around, if you remember people's faces, they remember you, and it's just an incredibly tight, kind circle for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, the biggest problem I see now with the media world, when younger people ask me how to break into it, the biggest problem I see by far is that there's so much. It's very, very saturated.
Oh, sure.
Because of technology, because of the internet. It used to be that you had a radio show, that meant you were on a radio station.
Yeah.
Now it could mean you have a podcast, it could mean you have an internet show, it can mean anything. So you're out there and you got so many things going on that anybody can kind of do this stuff now, but how do you get an audience and a following and stand out? That's the trick.
Getting people's attention, and for the consumer, your attention is now a prize. I heard something like, when Bing Crosby used to have his TV show, 10 million people would be watching the same thing at the same time, and the media world has totally flipped. So you do kind of have to do a little crazier stuff. You do have to maybe put in a little more effort or have something unusual.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. I'm very lucky because I started long before all that stuff was happening, so I built an audience and a name and known for something. So I've been lucky to keep that audience and build on it. So that's invaluable. It's very much just like a band, a band that started back then. Well, any of these bands playing today, they all have hits, they all have a following from back in the day. I'm lucky that I have that. If you're a brand new band, you're trying to find a way to stand out. It's an interesting time. I think there's some pros and cons to what's going on these days, and hopefully the scene can thrive and continue to build, and people support these artists. There's so many classic artists that are making great new music that unfortunately it bums me out because a lot of people just don't know about or pay attention to, and I hope that can change too, because I think a lot of great records are flying under the radar right now.
What's on your radar? Something that people should know about?
Well, a band I actually had a hand in putting together called the Winery Dogs are getting ready to release their second record. Billy Sheehan, Richie Kotzen, Mike Portnoy. That comes out in October. Really excited about that. I have the record already. It's amazing. So I'm really liking that.
Not to interrupt, but how do you consume your media? Do you buy records from a record store?
I do. My personal preference is still CDs.
Okay.
That is still my favorite way to get music, because I love having a physical
You want to have it in your
thing.
hand.
I want to look at it. I want to read the liner notes. I want to own it. I want to file it with my other CDs. So I'm still 100% a CD guy. I also, the other thing about CDs too is that they're still digital, so you can still import them into your iPhone or iTunes.
Yep.
So to me, that's by far my favorite format. I hate downloads personally.
Yeah.
But times change and people are going to figure out what works for them. But I'm still very much a CD guy.
I'd love to see your library at home. It's like probably beautifully filed. Is it chaos?
No,
CDs flying everywhere.
Yeah.
That would be neat.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I need a lot of organization that I don't have right now.
That is kind of a rock and roll kind of problem to have.